As president, I will work to raise the federal minimum wage back to the highest level it's ever been, $12 an hour in today's dollars, and support state and local efforts to go even further. There was some ambiguity about where it is that the minimum wage would be set if it were indexed to inflation relative to the late 60s. But that is the number, in fact, that she's stated as a federal minimum wage. I'm not an American. We don't need to get into this discussion here. I don't think that minimum wages should be set federally. I think it should be a state issue. And the reason is because the cost of living is dramatically different across the country. And there's not really a way to do it. It's the same thing. That's also true in Canada. The cost of living in Alberta is like 3 times higher than the cost of living in Prince Edward Island. So if you set the minimum wage to a living wage in Alberta, you destroy the economy in Prince Edward Island, because people would be, the person working at the McDonald's would be, a middle class worker, right? So it's not something that really makes a lot of sense. But for the sake of argument, the number that she decided on is $12 an hour, not 15. That's the fact of it. Alright, so I'm about to head out to go to the doctor. The doctor is going to let me know if my estrogen increase had a physical or chemical effect. What have I noticed? I've noticed a little bit of breast growth, which is overdue. It's about time. I suppose that if I wasn't getting enough estrogen, that explains that. And it's nice to have that explained finally. But beyond that, I mean, I've been on hormones for years. I mean, there wasn't really much of a difference. And I expected, like, the physical sort of characteristics to come in quickly, but besides that, I mean, you're tuning in on someone that's already, like, I'm not going to change the way I look because I've already changed the way I look, kind of thing. That's already happened. If I was to take my shirt off, you would notice that that there are some protrusions of measurable girth, but I'm not going to do that. It's not clear what the endpoint of that is. I know the literature suggested, I think it was about 70% of your closest female relative, which would be my full sister, which is substantial. Let's put it at that. And it hadn't been substantial, so having a larger dosage is getting me closer to what it is that I probably should have expected in the first place. It's also 3 months without smoking. I don't know if I specifically pointed that out, but yeah, not a cold turkey. I've had, it's probably close to, in total in the last month, I've had close to probably, yeah, close to 25 cigarettes. So that's close to a pack over the last, 3 months. So that's good. I am still hot. I'm still hacking shit up. I don't know how much longer, if it might have something to do with the apartment or what, right? Or if it might have something to do with some other illness. I'm still having difficulty swallowing. That's something else that I need to talk to the doctor about when I get there. Possibilities. It's been long enough that I've got a bunch of stuff to run off of them. Generally, when I run this to doctors, they tend to sort of, you're young, you're healthy, don't worry about it. No, I need to have this dealt with, and I can't take no for an answer, sort of thing. So we will deal with this by the end of the day as well. I'm not sure exactly what that's going to mean. We'll see what he thinks. It may mean a trip to an ear specialist. It may mean a trip to an MRI to get tested for those MS lesions or some of those other types of things. None of this is clear. So that's kind of a funny thing. I'm expecting him to tell me that my estrogen levels are more normal, and we'll go from there. But this is why I'm going. We'll find out when I get there. I forgot to charge my Walkman. I'm a little disappointed that I'm gonna have to go without music. We'll find out. So home, it is brutally cold out. Like uncomfortably cold. It's April. In fact, it's mid-April. It's supposed to be nice out. Anyways, my estrogen levels are about what they should be, so that's good. Number one. And I had a physical done. I think that the number one thing they really checked was my BMI is 20, so that's about perfectly healthy. The doctor seemed like he was like grasping at straws, like trying to like come up with something that come up with some reason that I'm unhealthy. But I pay very close attention to my diet, as you can see. It's designed to ensure that I'm like perfectly healthy, and all of the stats. I mean, my blood pressure is very low, like creepily low. But I mean, my cholesterol is low. My like everything is like spot on, perfectly healthy, and that's what I need to be. So I have nothing but good news regarding that. I also set a appointment with a with an ear doctor, or an ear, nose, and throat, and an ENT, regarding this facial tick that won't go away. Excuse me. To see what's up with that. It's kind of the next step in my careening towards more of a serious diagnosis. We'll see how that works out. I mean, we agreed that the issue that I had last week was probably a migraine. But whether it's a migraine as a consequence of something else is not clear, right? So I've got to wait for all that shit to work itself out. I need to see all the doctors, and do all the things, right? So the first thing is the least complex part of it, or the least, it might not even be the least complex part of it, but it's the least serious, right? So let's rule out anything to do with, an ear infection or something like that, right? And I mean, this is non-trivial. I think there's a decent possibility that a big part of it might be an ear infection, right? We'll find out, right? Yeah. if the ear guy says, this or that, or, you should see this specialist or see a neurologist or whatever else, right? That's what's next. But at the moment, it's just I'm healthy, as healthy as can be, again, and let's go from there. I need to do a little bit more running around today. I need to do my taxes, get those dropped off. Low battery there. I need to buy some strawberries, and etc. And then get back to the archiving. I got a good chunk of it done yesterday. I need to get this done by Friday or else. So I'm gonna do that. I'm back in zero sleep mode. I didn't get any of the running around I wanted to do done this afternoon because I lied down for an hour because I was just more than anything else I was cold. The heat's off upstairs again. It's freezing outside. So I had to crank the heat up down here because he turned the heat off upstairs and I was just cold. So I lied down. And I slept for like an hour, right? It was the same thing, like I slept for an hour this morning. Something like that, right? I slept for an hour this afternoon, and it's like, when I get stuck in this, this can last a long time when I get stuck in this route, right? But as it was, I lied down, it was around 3, I was up. I lied in bed for a couple of hours, but I didn't actually sleep. I got up again around 6. It's now almost 11, and I'm wide awake. I may be awake all night kind of thing. So I'll have to do that running around in the morning. Hopefully hopefully I can get some sleep tomorrow kind of thing. That would be nice. I don't like to sleep. I hate sleeping. But it's necessary as well. It must be done, right? At least it's warmed up in here. That's a benefit. Hopefully it'll stay that way. I had to really crank it though, because like I say, we've been over this. It's with all the cold air in the back. He turns the heat off upstairs, and it gets really cold down here, right? And again, a big part of it is like, if he would wait until it was like 15 degrees out, like continually, then it would be fine. But like, we get one day where it's 15 degrees out, and then like it's like below 0 overnight, and he doesn't turn the heat back on, right? I actually had a conversation with him once, and he just like, he doesn't trust the weather forecast, like at all. Like, it's reasonable to be a little bit skeptical, if they say it's going to rain, maybe it might not, etc. Like, he doesn't, if the weather network says it's going to be 10 degrees out, he's like, oh, maybe it'll be 30 degrees out. But, like, he has, like I say, he's not there. He's not, he's clearly mentally damaged, right? So, because he doesn't believe in the weather forecast, he doesn't check it, right? He just, he'll go outside, and if it's warm out, he'll turn the heat off, and then he won't, like, check to see what the weather's like outside, or, and then eventually he will have to turn the heat on when he's cold, when he shivers, right? So he just reacts based on what he feels, right? It must be very strange. It must be a very strange way to live, right? This kind of, to have, it must be similar to the way that we envision the way that people would have lived, 300 or 400 years ago, in a time when people didn't use scientific methods to analyze the world around them, right? Like a time before science, a time of superstition and lore and myth and religion, right? It's humbling actually to see that there are still people that are lost in these distant mists of the past, right? Where people still believe in magic and still believe in myths and you know. Uh, Something that came out of with the whole bedbug fiasco is the realization that, I mean, and it was from talking with the actual property owner, although he's been, I don't know if he's still technically the property owner, but he's the guy that I signed the lease with. Something that came out was that the people upstairs actually believe that bedbugs are caused through dirtiness, right? Like we're talking like spontaneous generation of vermin coming out of the dust, right? The actual belief that bugs come from dust, and that's why there was so much vacuuming, because in his mind he was actually eliminating the source of the imaginary bugs that all evidence suggests weren't even there in the first place, right? It's 2016, and there are people that think the bugs come from dust. Now again, I've tried to point out a few times that it's maybe a little bit rude of me to be a little bit, to be overly condescending. There's obviously some concerns there in terms of the psychological stability, right? I don't know what the exact diagnosis is, but it's clearly a substantial level of mental retardation, right? But still, it can't have been that different than what your average person would have thought, a couple hundred years ago. And you want to put it in the context of believing in ghosts and fairies and leprechauns and all of these sorts of things, right? It's like I say, it's humbling to realize that we're not that far from this kind of backwardsness, right? That a bad choice here and there, and we could be thrown right back into it. We're not as separate from the past as we like to believe that we are. So yeah, the weather forecast is just a sorcerer's tale, and the temperature down here is I'm learning how to adjust to it, right? But it'll be nice. It's just a few more days. It appears. It looks like it'll be on Thursday that the temperature will finally start to come up a little bit. What I really want, I'm sure we can hear that the fan's running. What I really want is to open the window and just flush the air out. That's the desire, but I need to wait for the. It looks like there might be some 20-degree days this week. At the very least, if I can turn the heat down. But that won't be for a few more days either. So, as it is right now, it looks like I'm going to be up for a while. I still have to do my taxes. In the morning, I will still need to go out and get some, some berries and some salami and some other things of the sort. But for now, I'm hoping I can get a good chunk of the archiving done. I'm almost done another step, so things are going. Things are moving, and well, it's Wednesday, and I'm gonna need to get my my recycle out as well. So all the things that are happening. Um, yeah, it's another multi-day vlog. This may actually there've been a few that have almost been 3-day vlogs. This one might be it. We'll see. For what it's worth, I am 100% supportive of fiat currency relations, and I believe that a strong central bank is a necessity to prevent currency speculation by the wealthy. I would prefer to abolish currency and property altogether, but so long as we are stuck with currency, I do believe that the fractional reserve banking is a superior system to any kind of fixed system of exchange like the gold standard. I'm a socialist. I understand that this is a socialist concept of currency. I support it because it is a socialist concept of currency. I also support a lender of last resort. I understand that the bailouts were, in fact, loans. I believe that money can and should be printed at whatever volume is necessary to bring the economy to full employment. Further, I realize that there's really no such thing as debt. It's just a imaginary construct. A social construct, even. So, I don't have any of these right-wing economic ideas, and as such, I have little point of identification with the economic program on the right. So what do I think about the Tea Party? No thank you. Okay? That said, I'm also a classical liberal on social issues, and I understand that I may be confusing to a lot on the modern left as a result of that. But I'm actually closer to a traditional concept of leftism than the modern left is. And when I attack the left as authoritarian, I tend to do it from the left. That is, I tend to go after what passes as quote-unquote liberalism nowadays. And it's straight from Elizabeth Warren, who's, a centrist by any... I would argue that Elizabeth Warren is a... Sorry, the battery went out there. When I attack the left as authoritarian, I tend to do it from the left. That is, I tend to go after what passes as quote-unquote liberalism nowadays. That's from Elizabeth Warren, who I would actually argue is a right-wing liberal. Right through the Tumblr types, as a lot of confused conservatives. Okay, there's nothing liberal about the social justice warriors. It's just a postmodern spin on religion, and dangerous for all the same reasons. We live in a reality where a defined left does not exist. Okay? Rather, we are presented with various strains of conservatism and told that they are liberalism and socialism, respectively. I reject all of this, so you cannot place me on your spectrum as you understand it. But I am clear where I stand in a broader spectrum. I am an anarchist or communist in the tradition of Bakunin, Kropotkin, Oscar Wilde, Malatesta, and more recently Noam Chomsky. I tend to lean Marxist, it's actually mostly from Engels, on economic matters, and liberal from people like J.S. Mill on social matters. These are old-fashioned perspectives that most people have jettisoned in favor of some concept of authoritarian thinking, to the point that I'm broadly misunderstood most of the time. The absolute rejection of authoritarian thinking is something that is not broadly embraced by the left anymore. It used to be. So when I come down on a lot of issues, it's often in a way that the left wouldn't understand anymore, because it's from a libertarian or anarchist perspective. Whereas the left nowadays is almost solely authoritarian Marxist, when it's even the left at all. There's also a very large pseudo-left, right, which I've tried to explain a little bit. They're not leftist at all. They're old-fashioned Christian conservatives, or even, market fundamentalists, that don't recognize themselves as the right, because the contemporary right has gone so far out that it has converted. I mean, by nature of the relative nature of the political spectrum, it's converted what used to be or should be considered a moderate right into, by some calculations, an activist left. I would consider Elizabeth Warren to be a moderate conservative, or a right-wing liberal. It's very much an overlap there. But in today's spectrum, she's widely seen as about as far left as the spectrum will allow. And what the actual left is just not contemplated, right? But I am a leftist. I'm a very pure one that refuses to be corrupted by conservative concepts of human nature, even when it takes me out into left field. And I mean that legitimately, okay? Not in this relativistic sense that I'm talking of, but even if it does legitimately take me into left field, that's fine. I'll set up camp out there, and you'll leave me there. That's okay. But just don't get confused, okay? I am a leftist, even if I ultimately defer to science whenever I can. Just because you don't recognize me as a leftist doesn't mean that I'm not one. What it actually means is that you don't know what the left is. And maybe you don't like the left. That's okay too. I'm not really into trying to tell you what to think, so much as I'm into pleading with you to identify yourself properly. If you're all about, breaking up banks in order to stimulate competition on an open market, then you're not a leftist. And it would be really nice if you'd stop pretending you are one, right? What you are is a conservative. And if you're all about, trying to tell people what to think, and shut down, expression and freedom of, I don't want to. I don't want to retreat to stale slogans, okay? But if you're all into, preventing people from saying what they want, well, then you're not a leftist either. And it would be really nice if you'd stop pretending that you are. And when I show up and I'm like, actually, I'm kind of opposed to any kind of restriction of speech, because that's what a leftist actually thinks. It would be nice if you'd acknowledge that, right? Instead of trying to, argue that I must be some kind of right-wing extremist because I believe in free speech. It's something that another old leftist that is often misidentified nowadays, who had the pen name of Orwell, might have something to say about, right? The entire spectrum is just totally run roughshod over. But in all of these, backwards terms, massive amounts of newspeak. It's the truth of it. Again, I just request that you place me in the proper place on the spectrum, please. I do not share any of those economic perspectives of the right, and where I do agree with classical liberals, that's the definition of what is academically and historically considered to belong to the left, which is a rejection of authoritarianism. And your whole, authoritarian, Marxist, Foucauldian stuff is right-wing on at least an authoritarian scale, and I would broadly argue more aligned with, Burkean conservatism than any coherent concept of the left. You don't have to agree with me, but let's not be confused, please. Thanks. So New York. Well, he does want to be seen a little tighter than this right now. That said, the polling numbers are not surprising either. I think the larger ramification out of New York may be a push for a more transparent primary process. It's really not democratic to cut off registration so far in advance. But there is still a week. Anything could happen. That said, it's very hard to see how it is that Bernie Sanders is going to convince a closed primary of partisan Democrats to vote for him instead of Hillary Clinton. He would have had to have registered a lot more people, or she would have had to have put her foot in her mouth a lot worse than she has. I think he had to have known he had his work cut out for him. It doesn't change what I said, which is that if he's going to win anywhere big, it's going to be New York. And if he doesn't win in New York, it's hard to take him seriously. He's supposed to be the left of the party. You want to run on the left of the Democrats, you have to win in New York. Like I say, it's a week. Anything could happen. But don't get your hopes up. If you think that not selling arms to the Saudis is going to save any lives in Yemen, they can always call the president and ask for another drone strike, right? Barry's never been shy about those drone strikes in Yemen before. The Saudi government is full of bad guys, sure, okay? The policy that needs to change is at a much higher level. The opposition to the arms deal is consequently really just a lot of empty moralizing, which isn't to say that I think it should go through. I don't. So much as to say that I realize that it doesn't make any difference if it does or not. The Liberals will usually prefer to take the position of engagement over the position of boycott. And that's probably legitimately the better starting point if you want to actually make some progress. But if you truly just want to pat yourself on the back without actually accomplishing anything substantive, then by all means keep screaming and yelling. So, if you're a Canadian activist, and you want the Saudis to stop killing people in Yemen, how do you do it? Well, you don't want to boycott them. Because if you do that, then they'll buy it from someone else. And there's lots of people that'll sell them. You could consider trying to convince the Americans to boycott them, but that's a task that would indicate a great ignorance of the geopolitics in the area, and as well as a great ignorance of American energy policy. That's a non-starter. So we can forget about the boycotts, unless you just want to, parade the moral superiority of the Canadian arms manufacturing industry. We only sell guns to peacekeepers, I guess, right? Is that what you want? So that's not the way to do this. What you would do if you really wanted to have the Saudis stop killing people in Yemen would be to send your guys in. And it's Saudi Arabia, so it would have to be mostly guys. Pretty much exclusively guys. Send them in and sit them down. Smoke the hookah there, and give it a long, hard talk. Now, let's be clear. This is going to be a hard argument to win. Probably going to take a few tries. But that's what Canada's good at. And specifically, that's what Canadian Liberals are good at. There's a long history. And we can even take it another level. That's what Trudeau's are good at. We hope, anyways. The last one was good at that, anyways. We'll have to see if this one's good at that or not. It's a perspective that has a long history in global liberalism. We can have a talk about whether boycotts can work or not some other time. I think that it's pretty clear that a boycott in this circumstance is not going to work. Or at least a boycott from Canada is not going to work. If you really want to make a difference, you got to win an argument. Using, skills of persuasion, rhetorical prowess. The Saudis might be a little less attached to concepts of human rights than us, but I don't think that they're beyond the tools of rhetoric. It's not impossible. It'll be hard though. Don't think otherwise.